The rain had started before sunset, but by midnight it had turned into a storm that felt alive. Thick black clouds swallowed the sky, lightning flashed behind the mountains, and a freezing wind screamed through the empty roads like a warning from another world. Four friends, Ethan, Ryan, Alex, and Michael, were driving through an abandoned forest road that almost nobody used anymore. The road cut through a dark valley surrounded by dead trees, broken signboards, and old ruins that looked forgotten by time itself. The boys were returning from a long trip, but they had made one terrible mistake. They chose the shortcut through Black Hollow Road. Locals believed the place was cursed. Travelers often claimed they heard whispers in the trees, saw shadows following their cars, and sometimes disappeared without leaving a trace. Ethan laughed at those stories earlier that evening, but now, sitting inside the car while the storm roared outside, even he felt uncomfortable. The headlights barely reached 10 feet ahead because of the heavy rain and thick fog. Every few seconds, lightning illuminated strange shapes between the trees, making the friends nervous. Ryan looked out the window and whispered, "This place feels wrong." Nobody answered him. Silence filled the car except for the sound of thunder and the tires sliding over the wet road. Suddenly, a loud bang exploded beneath the vehicle. The car jerked violently to one side. Michael quickly grabbed the steering wheel and stopped the car before they crashed into the forest. For a moment, nobody moved. Their hearts pounded so loudly they could hear each other breathing. "Please tell me that wasn't what I think it was," Alex muttered. Michael stepped outside with his phone, flashlight. The cold wind hit him immediately. Rain soaked his clothes within seconds. He bent down near the tire and cursed under his breath. The tires punctured. The others slowly got out too. The road was completely empty. No lights, no houses, no sounds except the storm. It felt like the entire world had disappeared. Ethan and Ryan decided to take the damaged tire to a small village they had passed a few miles earlier. Maybe they could find a repair shop there. Michael and Alex stayed behind with the car. As the two disappeared into the darkness carrying the tire, fear began crawling inside the minds of the friends who stayed behind. The forest around them felt alive. Every tree looked like a shadowy figure watching them. Alex tried to distract himself by smoking a cigarette, but his hands were shaking badly. Minutes passed like hours. Then they heard something strange. Footsteps. Slow, heavy footsteps coming from the forest behind them. Michael raised his flashlight toward the trees, but the beam only revealed rain and darkness. The footsteps stopped. Then a low whisper floated through the wind. Alex immediately stepped back toward the car. "Did you hear that?" he asked in a trembling voice. Michael nodded silently. Suddenly, lightning flashed across the sky, and for one horrifying second they saw the outline of a tall figure standing between the trees. The figure disappeared as quickly as it appeared. Alex's face turned pale. "We need to leave this place now." But before they could react, the sound of footsteps returned, this time closer, much closer. Michael gripped a metal wrench tightly. His breathing became fast and uneven. The figure slowly emerged from the darkness. It was an old man wearing a long black coat and holding a rusty lantern. His white beard moved in the wind, and his eyes looked strangely calm despite the terrifying storm around him. Alex whispered, "What if he's not human?" The old man stopped a few feet away and stared at them silently. Rain dripped from his hat as lightning cracked across the sky again. Then, in a deep, calm voice, he asked, "Boys, what happened?" His sudden kindness felt almost unnatural in that horrifying place. Michael explained that the tire had punctured and two of their friends had gone to repair it. The old man listened quietly, then looked toward the dark road where Ethan and Ryan had disappeared. For a strange moment, his face became serious, almost worried. "That road is dangerous after midnight," he said softly. "Not everyone who walks there comes back." Alex felt his stomach tighten. The old man's words sounded less like a warning and more like a memory. Before they could ask anything else, distant footsteps echoed from the road. Ethan and Ryan finally returned carrying the repaired tire. Relief washed over everyone's faces immediately. Together, they began fixing the wheel, while the old man stood nearby, watching silently under the rain. But just when they thought the nightmare was ending, a new problem appeared. Michael searched his pockets, then the ground, then the toolbox. His face turned white. The nuts. The wheel nuts are gone. Everyone froze. They searched everywhere using their flashlights, but the storm had washed them away. Panic spread instantly. Without the nuts, the tire could not be attached properly, and being stranded on Black Hollow Road all night felt like a death sentence. Ryan kicked the muddy ground in frustration. Alex looked around nervously, as if expecting something terrible to emerge from the forest. The old men suddenly began laughing softly, not a loud laugh, but slow and strange enough to make the friends uncomfortable. Ethan angrily snapped, "What's funny?" The old man stepped closer into the light. "You boys are so scared that you forgot how to think." His eyes reflected the lantern's flame while thunder exploded behind him. The storm seemed to pause around him for a moment. Then he smiled and said, "Maybe I can help you, but wisdom always has a price." The storm grew even stronger as the old man stood beside the car holding his lantern. Rainwater dripped from the edge of his black coat while thunder shook the entire valley. For a few seconds, none of the four friends spoke. They simply stared at the strange old man, whose calm face looked completely out of place in that terrifying forest. Ethan finally broke the silence. "What do you mean by price?" he asked carefully. The old man smiled faintly and lifted the lantern closer to his face. Deep wrinkles covered his skin, and his pale eyes reflected the flickering flame in a way that made him look almost unreal. "Nothing is free in this world, son," he replied softly. "Not even wisdom." Ryan nervously reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded $100 bill. "If you can really help us, this is yours." The old man looked at the money for a moment before taking it slowly. Then, without another word, he crouched beside the damaged wheel. His movements were calm and confident, like someone who had solved this problem 100 times before. "You boys are thinking too hard," he said while pointing toward the other tires. "This car still has 3 working wheels, and every wheel has 4 nuts attached to it." The friends looked at each other in confusion. The old man continued, "Remove 1 nut from each of the remaining tires. Then use those 3 nuts to attach the punctured wheel. Every tire will still have 3 nuts holding it tightly. It will be enough to safely reach the next town." For a second, silence filled the road again. Then Michael's eyes widened with disbelief. "That's actually genius." The 4 friends immediately began following the old man's advice. Within minutes, the tire was fixed. The car stood ready to move once again. Relief spread across their exhausted faces. For the first time that night, they felt hope. Ethan smiled and turned toward the old man. "Thank you. Honestly, we would have been trapped here without you." But the old man did not smile back. Instead, he looked toward the dark forest behind them, as if listening to something hidden inside the storm. The wind suddenly became colder. Ryan noticed that the lantern's flame was flickering wildly now. "You boys should leave quickly," the old man whispered. "This road becomes dangerous after 1 o'clock. Alex forced a nervous laugh. "Dangerous because of ghosts?" The old man slowly turned his eyes toward him. "Some stories exist for a reason." Loud crack of thunder exploded overhead, making everyone jump. Then the old man stepped backward into the darkness. "Wait," Michael called out. "At least tell us your name." The old man paused. Rain poured heavily around him, while shadows danced between the trees. "Daniel," he answered quietly. "People used to know me as Daniel." Something about the way he said "used to" made the air feel colder. Before anyone could ask another question, strange sound echoed from deep inside the forest. It sounded almost like a scream carried by the wind. Alex's face instantly turned pale. Ethan quickly opened the car door. "Forget this place. Let's go now." The 4 friends climbed into the car as fast as possible. Michael started the engine, and the headlights cut through the darkness once again. But just before they drove away, Ryan looked through the rear window to wave goodbye to the old man. His body suddenly froze. "Guys," he whispered weakly. "Where did he go?" Everyone turned around immediately. The road behind them was completely empty. There was no old man, no lantern, no footprints in the mud, nothing. It was as if Daniel had vanished into thin air. A deep silence filled the car. Michael pressed the accelerator harder, desperate to leave Black Hollow Road forever. The car moved carefully through the storm, while fear sat heavily inside every heart. Nobody spoke for several minutes. Then Alex quietly said, "That man wasn't normal." Ethan tried to sound logical, but even his voice trembled. "Maybe he walked into the woods." Ryan shook his head slowly. "No, I looked away for 2 seconds. A man that old couldn't disappear that fast." Another flash of lightning illuminated the forest beside the road. For one horrifying moment, they thought they saw dozens of shadowy figures standing between the trees, watching the car pass. Michael immediately increased speed. "Don't look outside," he muttered. The road seemed endless. Now, every mile felt cursed. The storm refused to stop, and strange noises kept echoing through the valley. Sometimes it sounded like whispers, sometimes like distant crying. At one point, Alex swore he saw someone standing in the middle of the road ahead, but when the headlights reached closer, there was nothing there. Fear slowly consumed them all. Nearly an hour later, they finally spotted lights in the distance. A small gas station stood near the highway outside the forest. Never in their lives had ordinary lights looked so beautiful. Michael stopped the car immediately, and the 4 friends stepped out, exhausted and shaken. An elderly gas station worker noticed their terrified expressions and walked over. "You boys look like you've seen death itself," he joked lightly. Ethan forced a weak smile. "Something like that." Ryan hesitated for a moment before asking, "Sir, do you know an old man named Daniel who lives near Black Hollow Road?" The worker's smile disappeared instantly. "Daniel?" he repeated quietly. "Tall man, white beard, carries an old lantern?" The friends stared at him in shock. "Yes," Michael replied quickly. The old worker slowly removed his glasses. His face had turned pale. "That's impossible." A cold chill ran through every friend at once. "Why?" Alex whispered. The old worker looked toward the dark forest far behind them. "Because Daniel died on that road over 20 years ago during a storm exactly like tonight." Silence crashed over the group like thunder. The worker continued in a low voice. "People say he used to help stranded travelers before he died. Some believe his spirit still wanders Black Hollow Road, saving lost people from meeting the same fate he did." Nobody spoke after that. The storm outside slowly began to calm, but inside the hearts of the 4 friends, fear remained alive forever. That terrifying night changed them completely. Years later, they would still remember the cold rain, the endless darkness, and the mysterious old man named Daniel who appeared when they had lost all hope, then vanished back into the shadows of Black Hollow Road. Years passed after that terrifying night on Black Hollow Road, but none of the 4 friends were ever able to forget what happened there. The storm, the endless darkness, the whispers in the forest, and especially the mysterious old man named Daniel became a permanent scar in their memories. At first, they tried convincing themselves that fear had simply affected their minds. Maybe the storm, exhaustion, and panic had created illusions. Maybe the gas station worker had exaggerated the story. But deep inside, every one of them knew the truth. They had met someone who did not belong to the world of the living. After that night, their lives slowly changed in strange ways. Ethan, who had once laughed at ghost stories and supernatural legends, became a completely different person. He stopped mocking people's fears and began believing that some mysteries in life could never truly be explained. Ryan developed severe nightmares. Almost every week, he woke up in the middle of the night, sweating and terrified after dreaming about standing alone on Black Hollow Road while shadowy figures watched him from the trees. Sometimes in those dreams, he could still hear Daniel's calm voice warning him to leave before it was too late. Alex changed the most. Before that night, he had been reckless, arrogant, and careless about life. But the terror he felt on that cursed road humbled him completely. He became quieter, more respectful, and more thoughtful toward others. Michael, however, became obsessed with uncovering the truth behind Daniel and Black Hollow Road. The mystery consumed him for years. He spent countless nights researching old newspapers, local legends, and forgotten records about the road. Eventually, he discovered something chilling. 20 years earlier, during a violent storm almost identical to the one they experienced, A local mechanic named Daniel Harper had disappeared while helping stranded travelers on Black Hollow Road. According to the reports, Daniel left his home carrying a lantern after hearing that a family was trapped on the road during heavy rain. The family survived, but Daniel never returned. Days later, search teams found his broken lantern near the forest, but his body was never discovered. After that incident, strange stories about the road began spreading across nearby towns. Drivers claimed they saw an old man standing beside the road during storms. Some said he warned them about accidents ahead. Others claimed he helped repair their vehicles before mysteriously vanishing. Many people believed Daniel's spirit still wandered the cursed road, protecting travelers from danger. Michael printed every article and collected every piece of information he could find. One evening, nearly 10 years after the incident, the four friends met again at a small cabin outside the city. Rain softly tapped against the windows while they sat around a wooden table, remembering that unforgettable night. None of them had visited Black Hollow Road ever again. Ryan nervously laughed while holding a cup of coffee. "You know what's crazy?" he said quietly. "Sometimes I still feel like Daniel was more alive than any of us that night." Nobody laughed at the comment. Deep down, they all understood what he meant. After hours of talking, Michael finally revealed everything he had discovered about Daniel. The room fell silent as he explained the old mechanic's disappearance and the ghost stories connected to the road. Alex stared into the fireplace without speaking. Ethan slowly shook his head. "So, all these years, we were saved by a dead man." Michael looked toward the rain outside the cabin window. "Maybe," he whispered. "Or maybe some people are too good to completely disappear from this world." Suddenly, lightning flashed outside, illuminating the dark forest surrounding the cabin. For a brief second, Ryan's face lost all color. He stood up so quickly his chair nearly fell backward. "Did you see that?" he asked in a frightened voice. The others immediately turned toward the window. "See what?" Alex asked nervously. Ryan slowly pointed toward the trees beyond the rain. There was someone standing there. Silence filled the cabin. Michael walked closer to the window and stared into the darkness, but there was nothing except trees moving in the wind. "You're imagining things," Ethan said, though his own voice lacked confidence. Ryan sat down again, trying to calm himself. "Maybe," he whispered, but deep inside, none of them felt comfortable anymore. The atmosphere inside the cabin suddenly felt heavy and cold. Then, without warning, the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the room instantly. Alex cursed under his breath, while Michael searched for a flashlight. Outside, thunder exploded across the mountains. For several terrifying seconds, the only sound inside the cabin was the rain hitting the roof. Then they heard it. 3 slow knocks on the cabin door. Knock, knock, knock. Every friend froze. Nobody moved. Nobody even breathed properly. Another flash of lightning illuminated the room through the windows for a split second. The knocking came again, louder this time. Knock, knock, knock. Ryan's hands trembled violently. "Don't open it," he whispered. Michael slowly grabbed the flashlight and aimed it toward the door. His heartbeat pounded inside his chest like a drum. "Who's there?" he shouted. No answer came, only the sound of rain and distant thunder. Then, from the other side of the door, an old familiar voice spoke softly. "Boys, the storm is getting worse. You shouldn't stay here tonight." The 4 friends stared at each other in horror. It was Daniel's voice, the exact same calm voice they had heard on Black Hollow Road years ago. Alex backed away from the door in fear. Ethan's face turned completely pale. Ryan looked moments away from collapsing. Michael slowly approached the door with trembling hands. Every instinct inside him screamed not to open it, but he needed to know the truth. The knocking stopped. Silence returned once more. Michael took a deep breath and finally opened the cabin door. Cold wind immediately rushed inside. Rain poured heavily outside beneath the dark sky, but there was nobody there. Only an old rusty lantern sitting quietly on the wooden porch, glowing softly in the storm.